Hey, this is Pamela Riemenschneider, retail editor for Blue Book Services, and I have Greg Johnson with me, and this is the Produce Reporter Week in Review. We're a little early because Greg's going on vacation, but we have some newsy stuff to talk about.
And we
First up,
both survived daylight saving.
I know we both survived daylight saving, although I did have a kid stay home sick first day of daylight saving. Was he tired or was he sick? I don't know. So yes, and I actually have incorporated the fact that it is daylight saving and not daylight savings.
Correct.
I'm slowly but surely working that out. I've seen it everywhere now, and I'm trying not to be irked by it. My grammar police mentality, however, is making that difficult. So Greg, we have more coronavirus to talk about. Obviously, I mean, my husband just had a conference canceled in Orlando today. He was supposed to go there next week. South by Southwest is canceled.
Yeah, you were going to be there next week.
Yeah, New England Produce Council. They canceled a dinner meeting. I'm wondering what the next one's going to be canceled, but you have an article today to talk about some of the things. It's like everyone rediscovered hand washing. How about let's revisit produce washing?
There are some bad stories out there, unfortunately, and they focused on what to do about fresh produce. Naturally, we think if there's this bacteria or virus going around and it's this dangerous, then the produce that's just sitting exposed in a grocery store is at risk. But the reality is the risk is no higher than it's ever been. And I talked to United, and they gave an official statement that said you should still buy produce in the grocery store, and all you need to do is wash it with running cold water, just like before. Everything that washes off the pesticide residue will wash off any viruses or nasty stuff that gets on it, including corona. So there are a couple of stories out there that I point out where some mainstream media sources are saying wash with soap and water. Don't do that. That's a bad idea.
No.
Only buy fresh produce packaged or anything like that, or don't buy fresh produce. That's bad advice.
And, I saw a Reuters article about this, and another comment just popped up on LinkedIn where I shared it. Somebody was saying that, they're hearing customers say that they're having less demand in the produce department. And then someone just said that food service is hurting right now because of coronavirus. People don't want to go to restaurants and congregate. I know for South by Southwest, the cancellation, besides the actual conference, it's like the economic impact of a Super Bowl every year for us. It's $350 million, give or take. And the ones that are going to be hurting are the service industry and food service. So when these events are canceled, people are going to eat what? Maybe retail.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the things we learned from the recession from 2008, 2009, because you and I were both covering the produce industry then. And it was a recession where no one went hungry. People traded down. People still ate. You did see some decline at restaurants. You did see some higher end. You saw some of the maybe value added in produce departments go down. But you also saw real strength, especially in value products and bigger packs, potatoes, onions, apples. People were still eating. And so we're only a few months into this in the United States, and it would not surprise me if food service does take a hit. But at the same time, we're going to have stories for the next few months about how online grocery is growing. We had that story last week that you reported on. If someone was going to give it a try and now they're self-quarantining, they got to get food. That's a good way to do it and not break the bank than having pizza and everything else delivered through food service.
Yeah, for sure. And, that brings us to the next story, is something I'm following up on, is we've gone back and forth over the years of how best to do online fulfillment. Is it better to do it in store because it's already there, there's a lower cost of scaling up, or is it better to do an online fulfillment center? Because why do you want to pay someone to merchandise food and then pay someone else to pick it? but it seems like Hy-Vee out of Iowa has decided they're going back into stores and perhaps into more of the micro fulfillment within a dark store concept rather than the freestanding order fulfillment centers. From everything I've read, it looks like they weren't getting the traffic that they needed, and consumers are preferring to do more pickup. And you don't get that as much at a big order fulfillment center. So they're closing 4 of these and concentrating back on doing the fulfillment from stores.
Hy-Vee is in my area. They're a Midwestern chain. They're based in Iowa. They have a lot of stores, I believe, Nebraska and Minnesota, but also the Kansas City metro area. And they had one of those fulfillment centers in Kansas City. It's an interesting angle, and I'm tempted to think that maybe because there's less population density in the Midwest as opposed to the coasts where you have much higher density in some of the bigger cities, that maybe that's making it a little bit harder to be profitable. And clearly they didn't see it in the near-term future, or they wouldn't have abandoned these centers which they've built. So they're not just weeks or months away from being profitable. They just didn't see it, it looks like.
Yeah, and when we look at who's doing a lot of stuff in online grocery, Amazon obviously is one to look at, and they're exploring all kinds of different ways to do it. And and Albertsons as well is doing a lot of experimenting. Their latest experiment involves basically cutting store in half and adding the fulfillment center to half of the store, and that way you still have the product assortment that people expect, but they also want that same day pickup slot. Like you said, the population density probably isn't there in a lot of the Midwestern cities. I'm thinking of places like Omaha, probably doesn't have enough people to make it profitable, but somewhere like Los Angeles, on the other hand, it might work better there.
A couple of weeks ago at NGA, there was some frustration amongst a lot of the speakers that while they see online and delivery or pickup being an important part of the future, I don't think anyone was doing it profitably or saw an angle that was quickly going to be profitable. They're just kind of hoping that something emerges or someone figures it out, or maybe consumers will realize this just isn't that worth it, especially in small towns where a lot of these smaller dependents are. That's, those can be meeting places and places that you want to go and see people and find out what's going on, as opposed to getting it delivered. And when are you going to go out if you're not going out to get your food?
Well, and it's a high touch service to offer, and as we all know, labor is one of the most expensive pieces of the puzzle. So not surprising. Speaking of labor and in-store labor, I had just a press release, but it was something that I think caught a lot of people's attention. Sobeys in Canada has decided to partner with Infarm, and this should be familiar. Maybe flip a little recognition in people's brains, because Infarm is the in-store farming operation that Raley's and Kroger has partnered with to add these little, people have a hard time picturing exactly what it is, but I got you, because I was in London a couple of weeks ago and saw an Infarm installation at Marks and Spencer. And so I have a nice photo detailing exactly what it looks like. It's basically a 4 to 5 foot wide mini greenhouse that is powered by artificial light that goes in a grocery store's produce department, where they're growing, the one that I saw is growing herbs. And I put that on LinkedIn, and I got a lot of comments from people, especially within the industry, have a bit of a better idea of how this works than the average grocery shopper. And it's back and forth on whether or not this is actually a practical installation for actual food growing or theater of food, entertainment, and not exactly a most profitable use of space. Let's just put it that way.
There are a lot of question marks that someone who covers the industry would have with something like that.
Yeah. And Sobeys has had a lot of really interesting innovations over the last year or so. They've really doubled down on minimizing plastic in their stores. They just actually started as of February 1st, I believe it was, no plastic, especially even in the produce departments, as far as, the roll bags to pack your own produce. We'll have to see what that looks like on the retail tour for CPMA, if there is a CPMA.
Don't say that.
I know. I don't know, it's in the back of my mind. I don't want it to happen, but so Sobeys is adding these this spring to Vancouver, but they're planning to put it in select stores nationwide. Whether or not it's an actual selling feature or just a fun feature to create your store as a destination, which is another thing where we're talking about trying to bring people into the store. I thought it was also funny. I can't find it around here. I looked a minute ago. I was at a restaurant, an Austrian restaurant in Berlin, and there was, outside of the restroom, there was like a community board, and one of the postcards that was tacked to the community board was an Infarm postcard. So apparently it's quite popular in Europe, but even so much as putting postcards in restaurants. But it's something that's still pretty new for the US.
I've never seen one, and sounds like you haven't in this country.
No, I mean, you got to go to Seattle, but I don't think anyone wants to go to Seattle right now, do they?
Not right now. Yeah,
Right.
rubber gloves out again.
I know, right? I mean, what's one work-at-home lifestyle is that we're already way ahead of the curve. So everyone else. All right, that's it for the Produce Reporter Weekend Review. If you are not getting the Produce Reporter newsletter, you need to go to producebluebook.com and sign up. But it was so weird that I was at this like Austrian restaurant in Berlin. Oh, aha! This was like on the wall at a restaurant, but
Wow.
like a neighborhood restaurant. Just hanging out in Berlin. Why? It's so weird and so random. And of course I took it.
Sure.